This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Technical Advisory Committee Group meeting for Monday, June 27th. This time I'd like to call the meeting to order. Is there any modifications to the agenda? No modification to the agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion second to approve the agenda as submitted. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Same sign. He's seeing none. Thank you. Next is the May 23rd minutes. Entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion second to approve the minutes for May 23rd. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Seeing none, thank you. Director's report overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the Technical Advisory Committee. As an overview, today's agenda, as well as some of the recent freight study that's going on at Department of Transportation. So just wanted to provide that for you. We have a couple of updates and one action item. I just also want to provide a context for where these items are. As you all know, most of the work that MPOs are charged with are developing long-range transportation plan and the short-range transportation plan. And the long-range transportation plan is called, Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and the short-range is Transportation Improvement Program, TIP. So I want to provide a context of where all these items fit in. The Title VI and LAP falls under the requirements, federal requirements to how the planning process takes place, and Ashley and Dora will present those, one of the action items today. And the update on intelligent transportation systems and transportation systems management and the freight corridors, those, let me highlight those in the next slide. Let me go to the next slide real quick. So this slide shows several technical appendices that go in long-range transportation plan. In developing long-range transportation plan, not only it lists the projects of all jurisdictions that are envisioned in the next 20 years and beyond, but also some of these technical appendices that are required, how we take into consideration all factors and technical information. For example, the safety appendix has safety data, bike ped has infrastructure, transit has infrastructure, and then freight appendix has documents the goods movement in our region. And technology appendix also has the ITS component in it. So today we have the ITS, that's technology component, and then the freight component today is that belongs to the freight appendix. So just want to provide a context of how some of these items fit in overall in the long-range transportation plan. So on the same note, we have requested one of our staff to work with Tom Hine with KDOT. Alicia and Tom will be presenting the ITS and transportation systems management operations. On the freight corridors, Nick will be presenting that. I would like to also take this moment to share with you what's going on with statewide Kansas Department of Transportation on freight. So not long ago, just last week, there was a Kansas Freight Advisory Committee meeting that staff attended, and there was a presentation on freight as well as rail, and there is a statewide freight rail plan developed, and then it's on the website, and state is seeking input and public input. So it would be appreciated if you have some time to go to this link on this slide. And if you need the link, Ashley, Nick, or myself can send to you as well. So that's that on statewide rail study. It's really interesting about this study because John, Matt, and John Maddox, also from Kansas Department of Transportation, is leading this study. And there is a good cooperation between state of Kansas, Oklahoma, and surrounding states as well. So you can see from this slide how the ownership of rail and then the rail infrastructure throughout the state is, for example, BNSF and Union Pacific and so on. So it's really interesting to see because the freight movement is increasing and the goods movement and the grains from Kansas to rest of the parts of parts of the nation is happening. So it will be helpful for us to take a look at this. Let me go to next slide. And then this is from the same study, just to give an excerpt for you, that this is the Amtrak route for the passenger rail. You can see going through Newton and Dodge City to the left side, and then to the east, Kansas City. Those two slides are from the rail study, and you can see much more in that, and then please feel free to provide input for that. Let me go to the next slide. This I would like to share with you how the Statewide Freight Advisory Committee has a schedule. The June, there was a kickoff meeting with freight trends and the statewide freight profile. And then in August, there will be needs assessment, and the draft plan would be provided in October. So we'll share with you again at that time. For now, I'll just want to share a couple more slides with the first part, which is the freight trends that occurred. What did the consulting firm do? So let me share that with you real quick. So on the next slide, you have this commodities by tonnage. What's the top 10 commodities that's moving in state of Kansas? Obviously, the grains and coal are the top two, and then you can see the rest of those. And there's also projection for 2045 as well. And they also shared a lot of things, but I would like to share a couple more slides due to time constraints here. But when the plan develops, we'll share this again with you. There was this consulting firm who studied what are the freight corridors of significance in the state. So they looked at the criteria, which is, the truck volume. Where are the truck volumes that's greater than 1,000 ADT? And then, what roadways have this mode share of more than, the truck share of 30%, as well as more than 1,000 traffic. And they also noted that State Road 50 also is beginning to show those high volume of trucks. So now that's being added to our freight corridors of significance in this as well. So these types of analysis and data was presented, and staff participated last week. So just want to give a synopsis and a summary of all the meetings that went on. Also how the goods movement is becoming more important in our region as well. So let me go to the next slide. So, when the plan develops, staff will share with you again. And then let me go to the next slide. I think that's all the overview for my part. for today's meeting. And then I think let me request some bike ped count volunteer work that Dora and Ashley and rest of the staff are working on. So let me request Dora to present volunteers request and then dates of counts. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Dora Gallo, Transportation Planner here at WAMPO. Like Chad said, we're still looking for volunteers for the bike and ped count. We have flyers like this if you're pre-present or it's online. There's a QR code that most smartphones now can easily scan and take you right into the volunteer sign up page, or you can find it on our website. And our dates for the bike and ped count are the September 21st, 22nd, and the 24th, and it varies on times. If you have any questions, please contact me or anybody here in the office, and we'll be happy to assist you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora. Mr. Chair, thank you. And then I think Ashley has the next public comment.
Thank you. So I'm Ashley Byers, Transportation Planning Manager, and yes, the public comment period for the Transportation Improvement Program and the MTP Amendment 2 started on June 15th and will go until July 15th. And we have our open house for that meeting or planning process on Wednesday at the Advanced Learning Library in Conference Room C, I believe, and it'll be from 4 to 6:30. We'd love to have you there. It is a come and go type event. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Anything else, Director? Time for public comment. If there's anybody who'd like to address the board, I ask you to step up to the mic, state your name, your address.
Thank you. My name is Jane Burns. Many of you know me because you don't have too many other public inputters. Is that right? You know me as an advocate for health and safety for children, health seekers, disabled, seniors, and folks who just choose not to drive, who'd like to get around other ways. I was at a table full of people where I was the 9th person, and I said to that table full of people, East Wichitans, how often do you go to Andover and we'll use that new section that's planned for East Kellogg? And one person said once every 2 months, and the rest said no, never. So I'm giving my credentials as a consumer, and as a grandma, but also as a person with a master's degree who teaches at the college level. There are so many parts about transportation planning that I do not understand. And I ran across some calculations by another layperson that is not a professional transportation person. As a consumer, you get information plenty of ways: official ways, public ways, private ways, conversations, news sources. So I'd like to run these numbers by you because you are the professionals. This person has tracked public sources for transportation costs. And that person came up with, in the last 8 years, since 2014, we've spent or are on fast track to spend $1.3 billion for 17 miles of road. That's an average of 76 million per mile, or $1,208 per inch of road. Stuff like the North Junction cost, and those numbers probably are easily available to you all. The North Junction cost $297 million for 8.5 miles. the East Kellogg expansion plan, the old 135 exit to K96, $1/3 billion for 2.5 million. The East Kellogg expansion phase, where it is now, to Andover, 225 million for 2.5 miles. And West Kellogg, starting at 235, 438 million for 3.4 miles. So that's a running total of 1.29 billion for 16.9, 438 million for numbers. Did I apologize about numbers? You know, they get blurry, especially when we're talking millions and billions. This person who did this estimate said those costs don't account for things like maintenance or lost tax revenue and purchasing right-of-way or secondary costs such as more area for police departments to patrol, more miles of water pipes paid with fewer people to pay them through decreasing population density, etc. So you're the experts. I don't expect an answer today for sure, but you're the nitty-gritty people. Is it true, like many other or some other consumers wonder, if we're spending $1.3 billion for 17 miles of road? I ask as a taxpayer, and you know, a kind of a pain in the neck. Tell me where I should go to corroborate those numbers. Anybody?
Jane, first of all for coming and speaking. I think that as we all look at the cost of transportation and the need for increased transportation with the volumes of traffic, the cost must be staggering. Now, whether these numbers are accurate or not, I don't know. We'll certainly let staff take a look at that and we can see what validity, but I don't know how you'll be able to get an actual number back. But certainly the way you're setting this forth is what we all realize is probably pretty true in the fact that transportation and the road system is not inexpensive, and the taxpayers are the.
You know, the last comment I heard about the East Kellogg expansion was quality of life for folks who commute to and from Andover. There's plenty of quality of life that's less expensive. So thank you so much for accepting public input, and I'll be grateful if any of those answers ever appear. Thank you so much.
Jane, thank you very much for coming. New business, item A, action, Title VI program manual. Ashley, you got this?
Thank you, Nick. The Title VI and LEP, which is Limited English Proficiency Plan, regulations apply to us because we receive federal funding. So then we are required to write plans for how we will address these items. Title VI is a federal law about preventing discrimination, and LEP is an executive order about providing accessibility for people who are not proficient in English. And our plans were last updated in 2015. And so Dora and Marcella went through the process of updating both of these plans. And so I'll turn it over to Dora and then Marcella. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. So what is the Title VI program and purpose? So WAMPO has a commitment to ensure that within the metropolitan planning area, people are aware of the Title VI provisions and the responsibilities associated with the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Title VI coordinator acts as the region's primary point of contact for the Title VI compliance and programs. The Federal Transit Administration and the Federal Highway Administration requires recipients to document their compliance with the Department of Transportation, in our case KDOT, with the Title VI regulations by submitting a Title VI program to them every 3 years to ensure compliance. The notice and complaint procedures. Recipients must disseminate this information to the public by posting a Title VI notice on the agency's website and in any public areas or offices, including the reception desk, meeting rooms, etc. To file a complaint, there is a form people can fill out, and then we must keep track of all the complaints. WAMPO's vital documents. WAMPO's vital Title VI documents include the following: Title VI notice to the public, the complaint form, your rights under the Title VI brochure, and the WAMPO Citizens Guide. And they are also provided in Spanish and Vietnamese, since they are the second and third largest most speaking language in the WAMPO region. Minority representation on decision-making bodies. So the Title VI requires a table showing the membership of the committees and councils broken down by race, and these are our councils and committees for in the WAMPO region. Regional demographics. Title VI requires a demographic profile of the metropolitan area, and here's a map that has a minority population breakdown in the WAMPO region. Thank you, and I'm gonna pass it over to Marcela.
Thank you. My name is Marcela Quintanilla, and I'm a JS and Transportation Data Analyst here at WAMPO. And I'll be working in updating the Limited English Proficiency Plan. So the Limited English Proficiency Plan includes the 4-factor analysis recommended by the U.S. Department of Transportation. These factors include the number and proportion of LEP persons served, the frequency of contact with LEP persons, the importance of programs and services to LEP persons, and the resources available and overall cost of providing language services. The Limited English Proficiency Plan also includes a safe harbor. Safe harbor means that as long as the MPO has created a plan for the provision of written translation, such action will be considered strong evidence of compliance with written translation obligations under Title VI. Any future update to this LEP plan shall include the reassessment of the 4-factor analysis, the documentation of numbers of LEP persons encountered, the documentation of complaints received from LEP populations, and the general assessment of how these needs have been addressed. In order to update both the LEP plan and the Title VI, we have been working with KDOT and FHWA to prepare these final documents for approval. And we are presented here today, and we're hoping to get your recommendation for approval for the TPV. And once it gets approved by the TPV on July 12th, we will be implementing the Title VI and the LEP plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora and Marcela, for going through that. So we have these options for you. Either approve the plans as presented, or approve them with some changes, or don't approve them. We recommend that you approve them. And once we go through your action then, and once it's completely approved, we will then go through the process of actually implementing these plans and keeping track of all of the numbers of people we interact with and translating documents. So I can answer any questions.
Yeah, I have a question. What changed since 2015? What did you find?
Do you remember? Okay. Yeah.
One of the things I noticed for the Title VI, there's just a lot of more information that needed to be updated, especially with our region growing and our increase in population, and then just I think also within the committees, you see more diversity now. So I think that those were some of the major changes I've seen since 2015. For the LEP, I'm not exactly sure.
So we updated the data for the LEP plan using the American Community Service survey from 2014 to 2016. That was a major update, but the numbers on the region for LEP population stayed basically the same. It went from 5.1% to 5.3% of LEP persons. 5.3% of the people in the WAMPO region can be considered LEP. Thank you.
Any questions on the phone? Anybody else got a comment? Go ahead, Tim.
I'm wondering who the WAMPO Title VI officer is.
Yes, so our new public outreach coordinator is the Title VI contact. So Emily.
I just had a question on the table 3 for the cost. Had the Vietnamese, I think, at 0.17 cost per word, but the other one is all languages. Can you make, is that correct? As
On page, what page are you on the document?
13. 23 of the packet, 13 of the sub packet.
Oh,
Didn't know if that was meant to be Spanish or if that was what that was.
good catch. Yes. So if you look at the table on page 53 of the document, that should say all language rather than Spanish, because it's the same table, just needs to have the language updated. So we'll get that change made. Thank you.
Is there any questions from the phone? I can't see on the screen.
Could you clarify which of those two tables are there? The tables are identical, but which one is correct and which one needs to be switched?
The table that's in the LEP plan has the correct language, which was on page 53. So the only difference is on page 23, it says all languages rather than Spanish.
Thank you, Ashley. In other words, page 23 and page 53 should be identical.
Yes.
On the table, that's all.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. The recommendation obviously is to approve the program and as written with that one change and pass it on to the Transportation Policy Board for a final decision. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve the recommended action as described by the chair.
We have a motion and a second to recommend approval of Title VI program as proposed and pass it on to Transportation Policy Body. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Saying none. Thank you. Ashley, Dora, Marcella. Item B, update intelligence transportation system.
So I'm not listed, but I'm going to quickly say something and then turn it over to Tom and Alicia. So the intelligent transportation systems and transportation systems management operations are very long words that mean using technology to improve transportation flow. And these strategies will address some of the goals that are in the MTP. So now I'll turn it over to Tom and then to Alicia.
Thank you. I'm Tom Hine with Kansas Department of Transportation and the manager of the Which Way Traffic Management Center here in Wichita. And so Which Way is KDOT's ITS in Wichita. So it's that simple. And ITS, we throw those acronyms around, Intelligent Transportation System. We started with the ITS architecture back in the 1990s I was not here then, but I came in the early 2000s, and it was approved in 2006, I believe. So it took quite a few years to build that architecture, and that's just the outline of how things are planned to go for ITS in Wichita. And we've actually gone pretty close to that architecture. We opened with a test project in Wichita in 2009 with just 6 cameras at 2 interchanges. We had 6 signs out there. It was really an opportunity for us to learn the software of how you operate cameras and message boards, and also to open the Traffic Management Center, the TMC, for Whichway. And that is co-located just up the street at the Sedgwick County 911 building, the public safety building. So we are co-located with Sedgwick County 911, which lends a lot of sharing of information and a lot of yelling across the room. We have a board of cameras, views up in the 911 center, and they use it extensively for incidents, especially. In 2011, we finally got to really putting in some equipment. We put in 28 cameras and 21 signs, and it really advanced us along. And we've had since then 4 more phases of deployments. We're right now in phase 5 and nearly completed with that. And so we've really built out. So those current numbers are 84 cameras across the metro, 43 signs. We also use a lot of portable signs. Dynamic message signs is the DMS, another one of those acronyms. And then we also post on the website cameras from other sources, such as the Kansas Turnpike Authority, some of the weather cameras that KDOT operates at weather stations. And then statewide, we have cameras from like the city of Topeka, but that's not Whichway. So we'll stick with Whichway. A few years ago, about 3 years ago, the Whichway Traffic Management Center became 24/7. Before that, we really only looked at the cameras and posted messages on weekdays from 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. Now we're 24/7. So we have operators looking at cameras all day and all night. The night ones are a little boring, I think, but nonetheless, they're out there and they do detect incidents and they do post for those incidents. Because we went 24/7 in Wichita, we also took on the responsibility of being the statewide traffic management center for KDOT. So we do message boards up on I-70 all the way to the east, almost into Kansas City. And then Kansas City Scout has a traffic management center, and they take over in the KC Metro, but we do the rest of the state. And this is what our website looks like right now. And I have turned off some of the layers for you just so you can see, but you can see the concentration is pretty good coverage in Wichita now. On the major highways, we're still working to go out to the suburbs a little bit more and get a little more coverage outside of the metro. But you can use that website and you can go into My Can Drive and actually save the routes, the cameras, the things that you want, so that when you pull it up on your computer, you only see the things you want to see. And that's really nice, because like that last slide showed you, there's a lot of layers that come up initially, and it can get a little overwhelming. So you can click those layers off, or you can set up a Can Drive account and have those layers that you prefer to come up initially. So there are a lot of map layers, and this is the major ones, I'd say. We have incidents, and this particular little piece that I cut just last night, there weren't any incidents going in Wichita at the time, so I don't have an incident icon on there for you, unfortunately, but that is probably the major use of Whichway when an incident occurs. Also construction. We have plenty of construction, and you can see the construction icons. It's the little flagger, or it's the lane closure on the way up to Keachai on 254 there. We have traffic speeds on all the highways, and because we use the Google map as our base, that's provided by Google, and it's pretty accurate. Our operators that are watching the cameras, they can see those travel speeds go from green to yellow, sometimes to red, and they know immediately they need to focus in on that and find out what the incident is. So it's very usable. We have also traffic sensors that we've put out with some of our deployments, most of our deployments in Wichita, but that's not complete coverage for the entire metro. So by using Google Maps, we get complete coverage, and we still use our traffic sensors for other data gathering, but generally we just use Google Maps for their traffic speeds. And you can zoom into local street levels and see that, hey, at every stoplight, you can see that traffic has turned red for that direction in the city of Wichita or statewide. So Google does a pretty good job, and we're pretty happy to use that as our background. And you can see there that we have icons for the signs, the message boards. If they're gray, there's no message on it. If they're yellow and black, then that's one that you can roll over and see what the message is. You can click on it and see it's brought up, and it will suggest what cameras are nearby to that sign that you could click on as well. Same with cameras. You can roll over a camera image, and it will show you a snapshot, a recent snapshot of what that camera has found, or you can click on it and watch live video. We also have winter road conditions, which will overlay over all those green areas that you see from the Google map. When we get snow and ice in Wichita or statewide, it will tell you whether it's purple means it's completely covered and blue is partially covered. So there are varying levels that you can look at, and you can click that winter road conditions off during the summer. Weather radar is put in from the National Weather Service on this map as well, which you can click on or off. And then a recent addition were the reference posts layer that you see in green there. I have one particular maintenance supervisor that calls me and tells me, hey, we're going to be on 135 at 13.2. I have no idea where 13.2 is, not like he does. So this is a very handy feature for me. I say, Ted, can you just tell me what the crossroad is? But he's strictly into those mile markers. And so we call them reference posts because not all of them match up with the miles on a highway, especially after a change is made on a highway. Maybe we bypass a city. Well, we don't go back and change every mile marker on K96. If we do something like that, we just change the reference posts. So we call them reference posts because they're not mile markers for us. They are mile markers on the Kansas Turnpike. Anyway, that's some of the layers that we have, and you can click them on or off. We post things for construction projects, obviously. This is K96 on the east side of town, or east of 135 anyway, and this is a daytime operation where they're working on some guardrail. You can see it up at the top of the picture. So they've got a lane reduction, and that always creates congestion and sometimes crashes. So we post on message boards for that. We post for snow and ice events. This is, again, K96 from the Oliver camera. This was a mess last February on an early morning. This is drive time, early morning, and you see all kinds of mess there. But a lot of times it's just normal, and you can look at the cameras, and I think that's what I tell people before they leave home, before they leave the office, before they make a trip. Spend just 1 minute and look at which way has to offer to see if you need to change your route. We like to put the power of decision in the driver's hands. We don't want them to do it while they're driving, obviously, but we do want them to use this information to make better travel decisions. Last Tuesday night, a brief rainstorm on East Kellogg messed things up. Someone hit the wall, it looks like. It's flipped around. Those accidents up against the barrier wall are always a problem because that's the fast lane. If we have one on Kellogg, I think they're all pretty fast, but that one especially. But you can see then, just by looking at that, you would see on the map either yellow or red on the Google map traffic speed. And that would tell you, okay, I better look at this and see, because that's the way I was going. And if you look at that, you're saying, wow, I don't want to get into that. And you see all the people that did get into it on the far left of the photo, where they're all on the frontage road now. So the frontage road's jammed up as well as Kellogg. So look at which way before you take a trip. Kellogg again, you know, this is almost every night there's something between downtown and 235 on the west. So this one's a complete shutdown because they've got a real mess to clean up here. And that generates this view on the next camera. And here you see the motorist assist vehicle from the Kansas Highway Patrol is getting people out of that left lane and getting them funneled over there. We also have a message on that message board at Seneca. You really can't read it from this because the camera's a little fuzzy. They get dirty, they get foggy, they get rained on. Ooh, it didn't look that way on my computer. Anyway, these are the afternoon incidents for May of this year. And it pretty much follows our average. About 70% are crashes, 25% are disabled vehicles for one reason or another, either a flat tire, they ran out of gas, it's just a stranded vehicle. But often that stranded vehicle will influence traffic. People will see something, especially if they don't get all the way off the roadway. If they get on the shoulder, it's a little better, but these things all affect traffic. So we post messages for them, we post them on the website so you'll know about those. Events by highway, we calculate all these, obviously. Kellogg, the big problem, and the big bar there that you see, and in 135 also has a lot of crashes. And those are the two that have the highest traffic. So it always influences your drive, possibly. So again, look at which way. So we have goals for which way. We want to enhance the opportunity for safer travels, safety. We want to increase the efficiency of our current infrastructure. We want to use technology to help people navigate the North Junction right now until we get that capacity improved with the North Junction project. We want to increase that efficiency of the current infrastructure through ITS. And ITS is just, you know, I don't have much in this show about TSMO, which is Transportation Systems Management and Operation. And ITS is a tool in that toolbox that helps us use the current infrastructure with more efficiency. Jane's talking about, hey, do we really need to build out everywhere? Well, sometimes we don't, or we just can't get to it because there are limited funds. So by using ITS technology, we can increase the efficiency of what we have right now. We also want to provide drivers with more reliability, just so that they know what's out there. That education that we can give them, or the information that we can share with them through which way, provides them with a more reliable, whether it's from West Wichita trying to get to Andover, or it's from, you know, the turnpike on the south edge where you get off at 47th Street and you want to go up 135. If you know about those obstacles that might be in your path, you might choose a different way to get there. So what's the return on investment? In 2015, we did a study on benefit cost ratio, and it came to 12 to 1. So every dollar spent yields $12 of return, and that's 2015. We've built out more ITS since then, which means, hey, we've spent more money, but also we might be generating that same amount of return on investment, we hope. This was done with a federal formula for return on investment for infrastructure, and we put the numbers in a very conservative way so that we didn't end up with like a Chamber of Commerce, wow, 45 to 1 ratio, you know, look how wonderful this is. So these are very conservative numbers, but it came up to be 12 to 1, which we think is pretty good. And you know, there are so many things that ITS does that can help people. It's hard to put numbers on those. Besides what you see here, the travel time delays is the main thing, but also less air pollution from people sitting in traffic, wear and tear on vehicles by just idling in a traffic jam, that kind of thing. So there are a lot of things that are hard to put numbers on and hard to put performance measures to, but we feel pretty confident in 2015, this was a pretty good number for which way return on investment. So we have some future which way improvements. Like I said, we're in phase 5 right now of our deployments. On East K96, eastbound K96, there's where K96 ends right at Kellogg, there's a pretty sharp curve. And so we have a TOPS, a truck overturn prevention system. That's what we gave it the nickname. So at that at that site, we have extra traffic sensors, we have extra cameras, and we have this message board. This message board will always be black if you go by in your car. But if you drive by in a semi and you are going too fast, this board will light for you. So it kind of alerts those drivers. We've tried all kinds of things to get truckers to slow down on this curve. So as you're going eastbound on K96, you get to this curve that leads you to East Kellogg, where we will eventually build out a new ramp. If you're a semi truck with a trailer, we have a sensor that will detect that. And then the next sensor says, okay, now that we've detected that as a truck, is it going too fast for what's coming up ahead? And if it is going too fast, this lights up. So I'm standing off the roadway there, and the truck is directly to my left at that time when it came on. I could not get the truck in the picture with the board, but nonetheless, it's right there. And I was there for an hour one day, and we had 5 trucks. It was a Saturday morning, not the best time to go take a picture of trucks. So I stood there, and 4 of them went through, and it did not light. But this one truck was going too fast, and so it lit for me. So I got a picture. And we've had a number of rollovers on this, and it tends to really make commuters mad, because that's the way they get to Andover if they work in North Wichita. Or, a lot of people use this, and we have to close the ramp to clean it up, especially if it's a livestock spill. Sometimes we've had to herd animals, but just no matter what it is and what kind of truck, a beer truck, we've had that. It spills, we have to clean it up before we open back up the curve. So the top system is a recent improvement. We really just fired it up in April, and we're still tweaking it a little bit. But the day I was there on a Saturday morning, it worked for that one truck. So we're making some headway there to hopefully keep this ramp open more often. We're also working on a queue warning on the other end of K96 up at 135. And this is an area where if you're westbound on K96, oftentimes when you get over to the 135 junction, it is congested on 135, especially from 4 to 6 p.m. And there are often fender benders or crashes in that area. So the queue warning system will detect that, hey, there's a backup of cars. So we have extra detectors that are saying there's a backup, and it will automatically light a message board that tells people, hey, be prepared to stop ahead. So we're hoping to cut out some of those secondary incidents that happen because of other crashes or just because of congestion. We continue to build out further and fill in some of those gaps that we have for cameras and signs. And we now put ITS equipment in all of our large projects, like the East Kellogg project, the 2 East Kellogg projects that were just completed, the new one that's coming. The North Junction has ITS built in it, and Kellogg and I-235 a few years back, that all had ITS built into it. We've got a website, as I mentioned, and we are making improvements to it. Now, the LEP part of this just came to us like a week ago. So it's probably not in your plan, because we didn't know we were going to get this. But our website consultant, they do websites for about 8 states, and Iowa paid them to get LEP symbols into their ITS system, and then our contractor or consultant then offers it to the other states that they serve for free. So Kansas will get this for free because Iowa paid for it. But rest assured, Kansas has paid for some upgrades that they then offer to those other states too. And we are working on a construction weekly digest subscription, which again, I think Iowa paid for this one as well. And it will produce a construction weekly digest, as it says, but it will be tailored to your subscription. So you can go in and create an account and decide, I only want to hear about things in Wichita or wherever. So that's another feature that's coming. They'll work on it this summer. It should roll out late summer. CanDrive, which is the overarching ITS in Kansas that Whichway is a subset of. As you see on the chart on the right, 73% of use is from a mobile phone. Not when they're driving, we hope. So initially CanDrive and Whichway had the website presence as a smartphone website to where it recognizes that you're on a phone and it dials things down and does special features. Well, we're moving over to an app now because there's so much use, and we just see that growing. Questions? You don't want to be in this Monday morning mess on I-235, and this is a great shot of the bad things that happen out there and the reason to watch whichway.org. Any questions for me?
I have a question. As you implement this and you have maybe some data, how do you go about measuring success? How do you know you are maybe going to reach that 12 to 1
It's difficult
cost benefit?
because so many of the features or the services that we're providing affect people, but there's no way to count. There's no way to count who diverted away from their normal route simply because of what they saw on our website or saw on a message board. But we know that that's happening. We do have performance measures, but it's a little, it's difficult to do those things that you can't put a distinct number on, but we try.
Text comment.
Oh, okay. Is Whichway connected to incident management systems in cars? That is up to Waze or Garmin to do that. I don't know. We do use some input from Waze. We don't allow Waze to just come in and automatically post onto our website, but we do screen some of the information that we get from Waze. We tried it at first, and it turned out that when we had a ramp closed at I-135 and Kellogg, the Waze entry, we didn't have a way to get rid of it once that ramp was open. So we kind of had to, we want to use that information, and we are using it, and our operators are using it, but we're not letting it automatically post to our website. But yes, we hope that all these services are grabbing our information. That's why we're here. And we'd like to someday get out of the business of that. If all these companies take over, then we wouldn't have to do that anymore. But right now, in the infancy of TSMO, Transportation Systems Management and Operation, and ITS, Intelligent Transportation Systems, we pretty much have to provide that right now. So hope that answers that. I know that sometimes some of those maps and services will send people on a detour that's not necessarily the official state detour, and we have to sign detours that can handle the loads that go on our highways. So often we're signing detours for semi trucks, and they may be 30 miles or 100 miles even the other day, because we're trying not to send detours down county roads that we're not helping them maintain. So we have to sign our detours, and locals pretty much know how to get around those situations, but we have to sign for official detours. Yes, question.
I was just wondering if, so it sounds like you relay information from other data sources like National Weather Service. It also sounds like you do your own posting to these message boards. I know there's other organizations that do this as well, like Trans Systems. Is this like a coordinated effort, or do you guys cover different areas as far as posting that to the message boards?
We pretty much post to our own boards. We share a board with the Kansas Turnpike Authority. They can post to it, or we can post to it. And they have their own system up and down the turnpike. So they are also 24/7 in their dispatch area, and those dispatchers post on the turnpike. But we are co-located when we're in the traffic management center, which we haven't been much for COVID 2 years. But when we're in there, there's a lot of give and take between 911 and Whichway operators, because they like seeing the camera views up on the wall, and they will often request that a certain camera be put up on the wall, and we can post about 12 different views up on the wall in the 911 center. Anything else? And we have a map. Our map maker will show us a map of our features.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom, for that presentation. It's definitely informational. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so with support from KDOT and Tom, WAMPO staff has created ITS equipment maps. So WAMPO will use these maps to visually communicate and inform the public on ITS equipment. We overlaid it with our base maps that we show for all other kind of mapping needs. And so these maps can be used in a variety of ways, such as posting on the website, printed informational material, and incorporated into presentation meetings like this. And so these maps represent the most current setup for the ITS equipment in the region. And WAMPO staff is going to continue to coordinate with Whichway and KDOT to make sure they stay updated as needed. And that is all I have for you. Are there any questions about this?
Thank you very much, both of you, for the presentation. It's interesting, the breadth of that with some of the emergency cameras and stuff that are out there as well, that can be linked to track different incidents. So thank you. Next item, existing and future bikeways. Ashley, going to kick that off?
Thank you. Staff gathered the existing and future bikeways found in all the different regions' bike ped plans, and we put those on our website. And then several staff members, including Eldon, Dora, Marcella, and myself, digitized these bikeways. We put the PDFs into GIS and then drew lines over where the lines were. We then presented the future and existing bikeways to the Active Transportation Committee in June, and then sent what we had digitized to the various jurisdictions to make sure we had digitized it correctly, and also if there were any updates between when the plans were created and now, if some bikeway was actually built. And we will use this effort for a couple of things. The Active Transportation Plan, the Regional Active Transportation Plan, will be worked on in 2023, and then Wichita is working on a bike master plan, so we'll provide that for that effort as well. And then for the MTP update process, which needs to be approved by June of 2025, so we'll be starting that process fairly soon. Eldon will talk about the specific bikeways.
Thank you, Ashley. Good morning to everyone. My name's Eldon Taskinen. I'm an intern here at WAMPO. So you may not be familiar with me, but I've been, lurking around the corners of these meetings for a little while now. So I'm going to be presenting the different types of bikeways that appear on our bikeway map. You can find the map in your packet on page 91. And the main function that this map serves is that it differentiates between the different types of bikeways that are going to be in the WAMPO region. So in those bikeways, we've identified a total of 8 of them. 4 of them are what we classify as off-road, and 4 of them are what we classify as on-road. So I'm going to start by presenting on the off-road bikeways. So the 2 most common ones that you're going to see around the map are going to be the shared use paths, which are in red, and the side paths, which are in blue. Now, these 2 types of bikeways are very similar because they're both basically sidewalks. They're going to be mostly concrete pavement, and they're going to be 8 feet or wider so that they can accommodate both pedestrian and bike traffic. The difference between a shared use path and a side path is that the side path is going to run alongside a road and it's going to follow the same route as that road. So they make for easier locomotion. Whereas the shared use path, it's not going to be adjacent to any road. So it's going to be largely more scenic, and it's going to be better for recreational bike riders. And so between these 2 paths, they cover a lot of the region. And while you may not always think of something like a side path as off-road, everything that we consider off-road in WAMPO is just any bikeway that is not physically on the road, because we differentiate between the two as a matter of safety for the bike riders, because different bike riders are going to want different amounts of security when they're on their bicycle. So some won't necessarily be comfortable with being on the road, which is why we differentiate between the two. So if we continue on, we have two other types of off-road bikeways. These might be what you more traditionally think of when you think of off-road biking, because we have our unpaved trails, because there's sections of the Prairie Sunset Trail and the Redbud Trail that are both unpaved. And these are going to be, instead of having asphalt or concrete, they're going to be covered in wood chips or gravel. And then we also have our mountain bike trails, which there's a few of them in Wichita. They're very small and contained in the parks. And they're narrow trails that are mostly recreational in use, where people can take their mountain bikes out and have a little fun going up and down the hills. So then, in addition to those, we also have our on-road bikeways. The most simple and straightforward is the bike lane, of course, and we have plenty of these in downtown Wichita. And a bike lane is exactly what it sounds like. It's a lane that is separated from the traffic, that is exclusively for people on bicycles to get around on. And in a similar vein, though slightly different, we also have our marked or signed shared lanes. And these are going to be regular traffic lanes, so cars can go in them. But they're also marked for bicycle use to clearly indicate that to the people on the bicycles, as well as clearly indicate that to the people in the cars so that they know to watch out for bicyclers. We also have two other varieties of on-road bikeways. We have our bicycle boulevards. We don't have many of these in the region right now, though I believe there are plans to expand our number of bicycle boulevards. But basically what it is it's a low traffic volume road that's been marked out for bicycle use. So much like a marked or shared lane, these bicycle boulevards still allow car traffic. But by looking at just average traffic volumes, we can see that it'd be a relatively safe place for people to bicycle on the roads, because they don't have a very high chance of running into an incident with a car. And then we also have on our highways and some of our more rural routes, we'll have paved shoulders. And so these are just extra wide shoulders that put some distance between anyone on a bicycle who wants to ride on that shoulder. It puts some distance between them and the traffic on the highway. And so what we've done is we've taken all of these different classifications of bikeways, and we have started putting them together into maps. So the first map I have here is just current on-road bikeways. So this is a relatively sparse map. You can see most of everything is concentrated in downtown Wichita, because that's where we keep most of our bike lanes. And you can also see the 21st has a rather long paved shoulder on it as well. So continuing on, this one, there's a lot more because it contains our off-road bikeways that we currently have, as well as planned future routes. Because one of the big things that we did when we were making this map is, when we were looking at the plans that all the different communities had put together, they had a lot of different and really good plans for where they wanted to put bikeways in the future. And so we decided that we wanted to digitize these as well. That way we can keep an eye on good places to put bikeways in the future, as well as once this starts being more available to the public, they can take a look at it and both provide us with feedback regarding what future and potential bikeways that they appreciate. And it also can get bicycle riders in the region excited about new and upcoming routes that might get added to our system. So the last map that we have is going to be the same one that's in your packet, and it is everything. So this is all of our current bikeways, both on and off road, and it also has our future planned bikeways as well. And so as you can see, with everything on there, it gets a little bit hectic, which is why we've also developed a web map for it. You can find that on the staff report on the previous page. There is a web link on there. And if you go to that web link, you can access this map online. And it will have an interactive legend that will allow you to turn on and off the different bikeways that you want to see. So for example, the future routes, they take up a lot of space. So you could turn that off when you're trying to, say, plan a bike trip. You can turn those off and just look at what's available. Or if you're not comfortable with biking on roads, you can turn off our 4 different on-road classifications, or vice versa if you don't want to do anything off-road. But that is basically the culmination of everything that we've put together for the bike routes. So I'm now open for questions if you guys have any, or if there are any online.
I'm just wondering if you have pulled the total mileage of the various categories so that it could be checked in 5 more years to see how we're progressing.
Oh, we have not done that, though that sounds like a very interesting plan. I like the sound of that. Yeah.
Showing all the black dotted routes, you said I think that's from the bicycle master plan, right?
Yes, most of that's from the Wichita Bicycle Master Plan.
Which I think was, hey, where would we ever want to look at potentially putting route?
Yeah.
So I think for the public looking at that, that might be a little bit misleading. If they see future, they're going to probably think, when is this one getting constructed? It may not have actually ever been identified for actually building any time in the near future. So I was going to suggest that it would be possible to note that as per the bicycle master plan, maybe grade it out a little bit more, but then to actually look in the CIPs of Wichita and surrounding communities in Sedgwick County for projects that are coming up.
Okay.
5 or 10 years. So they would see, hey, which one is going to be likely to be constructed here in the near future.
Yeah, because that was one of the challenges of putting together this map, is because each of the different communities had different ways of presenting and prioritizing the bikeways that they were planning to add. So in this initial map, we've decided that since the different communities use different systems, we would just present everything as it's been proposed. But adding in priorities and adding in what's currently getting worked on sounds like a very good plan as well.
I would just say anything that's in the CIP that actually has been looked at as being going to be built.
Yeah.
I would just say, yeah, like the city, which is building Arterial Street, more times than not, that's gonna involve the site pattern.
Okay.
You can just look at our CIPs. That one, and you could corroborate, you could ask us which projects involve an actual site pattern.
Okay.
I just think that would be to the public or someone might be a little bit misleading if you see I live on this street and shows a future bike path, but maybe 30 years, maybe never, maybe next year, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Show it's actually in the CIP. It's a little bit more tangible.
Going off of that point, I think it would also be really informative to know if there are plans in place, what type of lane is planned. I think that would be something that the public would be interested in.
Okay. Yeah, we can include that as well.
I had one question.
Yeah.
Can we assume that any off-street path is both for bike and ped?
So not necessarily, because at least the way that our bike plan has been designed, we exclusively reserve shared use paths and side paths to be shared by bikes and pedestrians. And those are any off-street path that is 8 feet or wider. So if it is less than 8 feet wide, then we observe that as a sidewalk, and that's for pedestrians exclusively.
I'm just going to reiterate Mike's comment that I think it'd be pretty easy to reach out to the communities and just say, which of these paths do you have plans to construct in the next 5 years? There's a lot of plans out there, and even like our comprehensive plan shows a lot of potential future routes and things, but that there's no real plan. If that area gets platted or developed, it would be implemented. But I think most of us have a 5-year CIP that would identify specific projects, and you could even just change a color of the dashed line and say in the legend maybe, and say these ones are planned or anticipated in the next 5 years, and these other ones are in a plan but not really identified for funding, and have maybe a little more useful map.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, comments?
This is Jack Brown.
Go ahead, Jack.
Morning. Sounds like I've got a little feedback. I guess my thought is that this map ought to be labeled not only bikeways, but pedestrian as well included. Some people get the impression that all of this work is just for bikes, and it includes pedestrians as well. And I just thought the label might be changed to reflect that.
That is true. We've considered making it a bike pedestrian plan, but we decided to go for bikeways as a label instead, simply because this doesn't necessarily show everywhere that a pedestrian can go. It just shows where the bikes can go, even though pedestrians can follow the same routes.
Although pedestrians wouldn't be able to use the bike lanes, so some facilities.
That is true. Yeah, the on-road facilities wouldn't be able to be used by pedestrians either.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Again, Eldon, thank you very much. And Ashley, that was
Thank you.
a lot of work to put that together. Appreciate it. Item D, update on the critical urban freight corridor.
Thank you. First, before I begin working on talking about this, I need to recognize the work that Eldon and Marcella and Nick did on this. They did a lot of good work. KDOT has asked MPO staff to make recommendations for roads to be designated critical urban freight corridors. And once roads are designated that, then they would be part of the National Highway Freight Network, which would then mean they would be eligible for funding that contributes to the efficient movement of freight. So that's why this is important. KDOT may designate up to 300 miles. It used to be 150. And that is for the critical rural freight corridors. And then for the critical urban freight corridors, we can designate up to 150, KDOT can, and it used to be 75. And the critical urban freight corridors must be on public roads within the MPO's urbanized area. And again, this is important because it could provide funding for projects that are on the freight network that will help with freight movement. So now Nick will talk about the specifics of it.
Thank you, Ashley. KDOT requested each of the MPOs in Kansas to provide initial recommendations for which corridors should be designated as CUFCs within their respective urbanized areas. There will still be a lot of work on it before things are finally finalized at the KDOT and FHWA levels. But as we put together our recommendations, we had to keep in mind what is stated regarding this program in 23 USC 167F, which provides the possible rationales for designating a corridor a critical urban freight corridor. The first possible way to justify it is that it connects an intermodal freight facility, i.e. an airport, a seaport, a rail truck terminal, like a grain elevator, to the primary highway freight system, which in the WAMPO area is I-35 and I-135, or the rest of the interstate system, which in the Wichita area would just be I-235, or to another intermodal freight facility. It can also be justified on the grounds of providing an alternate corridor to the primary highway freight system that is in the same corridor as a primary highway freight system route, and providing an important alternate for goods movement. Or the corridor serves a major freight generator, logistics center, or manufacturing or industrial land. Or just is otherwise deemed important to the movement of freight within the region. Now, we do already have some critical urban freight corridors designated in the WAMPO region from 2017 and 18, and are shown in the Kansas Freight Plan. However, this was back when there was still a maximum of 75 miles of CUFCs in the state of Kansas before they went up to the doubling to 150. So of course we would be requesting more than just these, but we are recommending for our initial recommendation that these all be kept as CUFCs in the area, and then that other ones be added to it. Now, to this list, I'd add the note that I've updated slightly some of the miles in the last column to more accurately reflect the distances that we have mapped for these as submitted to KDOT. But those will be firmed up more later. But just know that if you notice that this is not exactly the same as what's in your packet, just know that yes, it has been updated. Anyway, these include first of all, the obvious case of the main connector to the Eisenhower Airport. That's a no-brainer. Then we also have a very large segment of US 54-400 Kellogg from 135th Street West to the I-35 interchange in the east. Also 21st Street and 29th Street between Broadway and I-135. As many of you probably know, that's a major industrial area with a lot of intermodal facilities, and it's connecting part of the primary highway freight system to Broadway, a major alternate to it as well. And then also part of that major alternate, North Broadway, a section of it between I-235 and 13th, and a section of K-15 to the southeast, which includes going by Spirit Aerosystems, our largest industrial employer, as well as a section of 61st Street North in Park City, serving the industrial areas there, connecting them to I-135, and a section of hydraulic near I-135, and a section of West Street between US 54-400 and K-42, which is also a very substantial industrial area. I'm not going to go through our recommended new ones one by one like I just did with the current ones, but suffice to say these are listed in priority order, as in the ones at the top of this list are the ones that we are saying that we would most recommend, and the ones at the bottom, the ones that we would least strongly recommend, but still recommend. It's and you may notice that we have recommended a number of miles. I believe it's something like 94, 96 total miles of CUFCs, including the existing ones. That is as well more than half of the allotment for the entire state of Kansas, but we recognize that most likely we would not get all of these approved, and so we're just providing wiggle room so that KDOT can reject some, keep others, just to make sure we get as many as we can get, and so that was the rationale behind all of that. And a quick note, the top two on these, numbers 1 and 2, those sections of US 54-400 going out to the farthest edges of the urbanized area boundary, are ones that we also recommended in 2017, but which were not ultimately adopted at that time. And finally, here is a map of our initial recommendations, with the existing CUFCs in red and the proposed ones in blue with their priority numbers associated with them. The primary highway freight system, i.e. the Kansas Turnpike and I-135, are in green for reference. And you can see with the the diagonal lines going through it, the urbanized area boundary, which all CUFCs need to be within. Are there any questions on this topic?
I don't want to twist this all up, Nick, but there are two things that I'm curious about. If it can be done. We have the Northwest Expressway in the functional classification map, and we have ARC 95 in the functional classification map. They would both be, I think, critical corridors if they existed. Is it possible to add things to the map that don't exist at the time? And I ask this question because I think that classification helps with future funding of those projects.
My recollection is that we were told by KDOT staff that it needs to be existing as of right now.
Well, I don't need that answer right now, but I would just ask, do we check that and see if
Okay.
it's not to be added to?
We can double check.
And then that's important. Those are important corridors for future freight. Absolutely, and we'll look into that.
It can look at. I do know that it can look at future demand as a consideration, but not so sure about roads that do not currently exist.
Is there any implication on the classification that like would be designate any of these freight corridors? And do anything to what we need to follow up with on our classification? I was thinking if anyone would get, I like those big projects.
Are you talking about
functional classification?
Yeah. That's something I've not. To my knowledge, it would not change the functional classification of any roadway.
True. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, not at the moment, at least. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, the question that was just asked was, where did the recommended corridors come from? For what information was used to generate these? These came from WAMPO staff, starting from a much larger set of corridors that were identified on the basis of a truck AADT analysis, but ultimately that was not the whole basis for how this was determined. It's also based off of judgment in very large part of what is or is not in a relevant corridor or near relevant industrial areas. So this was purely a WAMPO staff generated as of this time. We did not consult individual jurisdictions about which corridors they would want designated.
I would think for anyone listening and for those here that as you take this back to your community, if there's something's been overlooked or an area in which we need to add, I think we would submit that information in. I mean, obviously, we're just going to review this today, and it's going to come at some point for action to approve this. So.
Thanks, Bert. I was going to ask, what is the time frame, Nick, on what? I mean, how much time do we have to review and maybe look at the priorities, and if there's anything we might want to add or tweak?
Well, this is
we were just conferring. This is not going to be an action item, so I think if there's going to be any recommended changes, we would want to get that into staff, and if need be, just discuss what's being submitted or what's on the list if there's any conflicts.
At the moment, it's a preliminary review between KDOT and WAMPO staff. So as time progresses and as the finalizations come in, we'll work with KDOT and then local jurisdictions. If it is needed an action item in the future, we'll do that if it's an action item. But it's very, very preliminary stages at the moment. There was no guidance, but then we looked at traffic volumes and industrial and there were several things that staff looked into, and then we'll be happy to spend time with you because there are too many to discuss at the meeting, but there are criteria and technical data behind these.
As I'm listening, I think what probably the concerns everyone has is once this is submitted to KDOT and KDOT approves it, whether it's by action or not, there's funding attached to this. So we want to make sure that if we put a recommendation forward, that we understand the criteria, we understand if there's something being overlooked. So you can guide us in that process. But
sounds good, Mr. Chair. We'll do that. We'll coordinate with KDOT and then local jurisdictions again.
Any other comments for Nick? Okay, thank you, Nick. Thank all the presenters today for all the topics on the business section. Moving now into committee reports. Jack, I know you're on the phone.
Yeah, I'm here. The Active Transportation Committee did meet on June 1st, and we did see the presentation that you just saw earlier on existing and future bikeways, as well as the city of Garden Plain and the city of Wichita gave an overview of their bike and bike ped plans. And then the city engineer gave us an update on the progress that has been made by the city of Wichita regarding bike ped projects. The committee feels that we pretty much now had input from all the localities in the region, And our next step is to move forward, talking to staff and update or create an agenda for our September 7th, 2022 meeting. The fact that we now have exhausted all of the communities in the region speaks well of the input that we received from those communities. So we have a good idea of what's going on out there in terms of bike planning activities in the region. So next meeting is Wednesday, September 7th, and glad to see any and everybody attend that wishes to do so.
Thank you, Jack. Is there anything on the Safety and Health Committee?
Yes, we met and basically went over a number of items. Probably the big takeaway is the staff is developing an RFP for a safety plan, and also we'll have a steering committee that will provide input to the Health and Safety Committee regarding that activity. So that's in process, but that is one of the items we'll probably have on our agenda for our next meeting, and that is August 1st, 2022. So yeah, there's plenty of activity going on, a lot of it with staff. If any WAMPO staff would like to provide a little extra input on that. The meeting that I just chaired was my first one, so I'm still playing a little catch up on the Health and Safety Committee. WAMPO staff, any other input?
That covered very well, Jack. Thank you.
All right, Jack, thank you very much for both reports. Any other business to be considered? Ashley?
Thank you. I realize we didn't discuss the August TAC meeting. We need to decide if we want to move it to the 29th or to cancel that meeting because there's a conflict during the normal meeting time.
I mean, I guess the first thought would be what the agenda load is. Is the agenda enough where it can be canceled and put everything a month out?
Yeah, there's no action items currently.
I'm sure everybody would be upset not to have yet one more meeting to attend, but I would recommend that we cancel the August meeting and move to September if there's nothing pressing.
Thank you.
For that, or, okay.
That should be adequate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other business? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion, a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you.